People often look at my life from the outside, and frankly, they are deeply disappointed when they imagine the life of someone who has compounded billions of dollars in the financial markets. They expect to see a Hollywood movie. They expect to see a ruthless Wall Street wolf surrounded by 5 glowing computer monitors, screaming orders into a telephone and sleeping exactly 3 hours a night. They expect chaos. They expect constant frantic motion. But when they look at how I actually operate, they see an old man sitting in a modest office in Omaha, Nebraska. They see a man who spends 80% of his day sitting in a quiet room, reading financial reports, reading history books, and simply thinking. They see a blank calendar. They see a life characterized by extreme, almost painful periods of absolute silence and inaction. And because society has fundamentally brainwashed them, they look at my quiet room and they ask, how can someone who does so little achieve so much? The answer to that question contains the single most closely guarded secret of the ultra-wealthy. It is a secret that the global corporate system desperately hopes you never figure out. You've been sold a magnificent, highly profitable lie. That lie is the belief that busyness equals importance and that physical motion equals financial progress. From the day you enter the education system, you are programmed to believe that success is the direct mathematical result of grinding, hustling, and sweating. You are taught to equate exhaustion with moral virtue. You see people wearing their 80-hour work weeks like a badge of honor. They brag about not getting enough sleep. They brag about eating lunch at their desks while answering a dozen urgent emails. They proudly declare that they are on the grind, completely unaware that they are voluntarily participating in their own financial and biological destruction. Let me give you a harsh, unshakable truth that will shift your paradigm forever. The world of true capital. Busyness is not a sign of success. Busy is a symptom of poverty. If your calendar is packed with back-to-back meetings from 8 a.m. in the morning until 6 in the evening, you are not an apex predator. You are the prey. If you do not have the freedom to sit in a quiet room for 5 hours on a Tuesday afternoon to simply think about your life, you are not wealthy. It does not matter if your salary is $50,000 or $500,000. If your time is dictated by the urgent demands of other people, you are still a machine. You are a biological processor rented by someone else. And this brings us to the core philosophy that separates the 1% of capital allocators from the 99% of exhausted laborers. I call it the bandwidth rule. To understand the bandwidth rule, you must stop thinking of your brain as a magical organ that can be run at the red line infinitely. You must start thinking of your brain as a battery with a strictly finite amount of daily electricity. We call this electricity your cognitive bandwidth. Every morning when you wake up, you start with 100% cognitive bandwidth. This is the mental RAM used to solve complex problems, to recognize patterns, to control your emotions, and most importantly, to make highly strategic decisions that compound your wealth. But here is the tragedy of the working class and the high-earning middle class. Your environment is designed to aggressively steal that bandwidth before you even have a chance to use it for yourself. Let us look at a standard Tuesday for an ambitious, hard-working professional. You wake up to the violent sound of an alarm clock. You immediately check your smartphone, floating your brain with notifications, news alerts, and artificial urgency. Your battery drops to 90%. You rush to get dressed. You skip a proper breakfast, and you enter the morning commute. You sit in bumper-to-bumper traffic for 45 minutes, fighting aggressive drivers and absorbing the stress of the highway. By the time you walk through the glass doors of your corporate office building, your cognitive battery is already down to 70%, and you have not even started working yet. Then the real extraction begins. You sit in a 2-hour strategic alignment meeting that could have been a single email. You navigate office politics. You suppress your frustration when your manager hands you a meaningless, repetitive task. You answer 50 emails, constantly shifting your attention from one minor crisis to another. Context switching is one of the most violent things you can do to your mental energy. Every time you stop focusing on a deep task to answer a Slack message, your brain burns a massive amount of glucose to recalibrate. By 2 in the afternoon, your cognitive battery is at 30%. You drink a highly caffeinated energy drink or a double espresso just to artificially shock your nervous system into staying awake. By 6 once, when you finally leave the office and face the brutal commute home, your battery's at 5%. You walk through the front door of your house, you are physically tense, emotionally drained, and existing in a state of total neurochemical bankruptcy. And this is the exact moment the system wins. When your cognitive battery is at 5%, you are biologically incapable of building a financial empire. You cannot execute the mathematics of compounding. You do not have the mental RAM left to read a complex real estate contract. You do not have the energy to analyze a company's balance sheet or to design a scalable digital business. Your brain has been forced into a primitive, desperate survival mode. An exhausted mind does not seek liberation. An exhausted mind seeks immediate comfort and anesthesia. So what do? You collapse onto the couch. You order expensive food delivery because cooking requires too much executive function. You open a streaming service and binge-watch 3 hours of television to numb the trauma of your day. Or worse, you open a brokerage app on your phone because you are desperate, and because your decision-making center is completely impaired, you look for a lottery ticket. You buy a highly speculative garbage cryptocurrency, or you trade risky options hoping for a magical escape hatch. You make emotional, impulsive financial decisions that actively destroy whatever small amount of capital you have managed to save. This is not an accident. The collapse of your cognitive bandwidth is a feature of the system, not a bug. Your employer pays you a salary specifically to rent 100% of your cognitive bandwidth to build their assets. They want you leaving the office with a completely empty tank. Why? Because a worker with zero cognitive bandwidth is a compliant worker. A tired population does not question the rules of the game. A middle manager who is chronically exhausted will never have the energy to step back, realize that his financial strategy is a mathematical dead end, and start his own competing firm. He will just wake up the next morning, drink another coffee, and step right back onto the diamond-encrusted hamster wheel. The system feeds on your physical and mental exhaustion. It profits from your lack of bandwidth. Now, contrast that existence with the quiet room in Omaha. Why do I protect my schedule with absolute ruthless aggression? Why do I say no to almost every meeting, every dinner invitation, and every media appearance? Because I understand that my only true competitive advantage in the global market is my cognitive bandwidth. My entire job, my only real purpose as a capital allocator, is to make the perhaps 2 or 3 massive, highly accurate decisions a year. To swing at the fattest pitch, I must keep my mental battery at 99% at all times. I cannot afford to drain my RAM on office politics, chaotic email chains, or the daily panic of the news cycle. By preserving my bandwidth, I'm accumulating potential energy. When the market inevitably crashes, when the rest of Wall Street is operating on zero sleep, sweating, panicking and making catastrophic errors out of fear, I am perfectly calm. My mind is rested. My battery is full. I step into the chaos, see the board with absolute clarity, and deploy billions of dollars into the best assets on Earth at a fraction of their true value. That is the power of the bandwidth rule. You cannot compound your wealth until you first learn how to protect your mind. If you want to escape the trap, you must stop treating your brain like a cheap engine. But realizing this is only the first step. Next, we must examine how you actually begin to reclaim your time and the deadly noise trap that keeps 99% of people paralyzed. Let us examine the exact opposite of the exhausted, burned-out middle manager. Let us look at what the true apex predators of the financial world actually do with the vast majority of their waking hours. People are endlessly obsessed with my investment portfolio. They want to know what stocks I am buying, what companies I am acquiring, and what macroeconomic trends I am tracking. But they almost entirely ignore my daily routine. They ignore the actual physical reality of how I spend my time. If you were to place a hidden camera in my office, you would be incredibly bored. The truth is, I spend almost 80% of my day sitting in a comfortable chair, reading and thinking. To the untrained eye, this looks exactly like retirement. To a middle manager who equates frantic motion with productivity, it looks like I am doing absolutely nothing. But in the realm of high-level capital allocation, reading and deep thinking are the most aggressive high-lever actions you can possibly take. Why do I spend 80% of my day reading? Because I am no longer playing a game of addition. The working class and the corporate executives are playing addition. I am playing multiplication. I do not need to make. People often look at my life from the outside, and frankly, they are deeply disappointed when they imagine the life of someone who has compounded billions of dollars in the financial markets. They expect to see a Hollywood movie. They expect to see a ruthless Wall Street wolf surrounded by 5 glowing computer monitors, screaming orders into a telephone, and sleeping exactly 3 hours a night. They expect chaos. They expect constant, frantic motion. But when they look at how I actually operate, they see an old man sitting in a modest office in Omaha, Nebraska. They see a man who spends 80% of his day sitting in a quiet room, reading financial reports, reading history books, and simply thinking. They see a blank calendar. They see a life characterized by extreme, almost painful periods of absolute silence and inaction. And because society has fundamentally brainwashed them, they look at my quiet room and they ask, how can someone who does so little achieve so much? The answer to that question contains the single most closely guarded secret of the ultra-wealthy. It is a secret that the global corporate system desperately hopes you never figure out. You've been sold a magnificent, highly profitable lie. That lie is the belief that busyness equals importance and that physical motion equals financial progress. From the day you enter the education system, you are programmed to believe that success is the direct mathematical result of grinding, hustling, and sweating. You are taught to equate exhaustion with moral virtue. You see people wearing their 80-hour work weeks like a badge of honor. They brag about not getting enough sleep. They brag about eating lunch at their desks while answering a dozen urgent emails. They proudly declare that they are on the grind, completely unaware that they are voluntarily participating in their own financial and biological destruction. Let me give you a harsh, unshakable truth that will shift your paradigm forever. In the world of true capital, busyness is not a sign of success. Busy is a symptom of poverty. 1,000 small decisions a week to justify my salary to a boss. I do not need to hustle for $100 here and $50 there. My entire purpose is to make perhaps 1 or 2 decisions a year. But those decisions must be mathematically flawless. They must be multi-billion-dollar decisions. If your entire job is to swing at only 1 or 2 pitches a decade, how do you prepare? You do not prepare by swinging wildly at the air. You prepare by studying every single pitcher, every single team, and every single variable in the stadium. You sit quietly so that when the ball finally crosses your absolute sweet spot, you swing with 100% certainty and devastating force. But what exactly am I reading during those hours? This is where 99% of people completely misunderstand the assignment. Most people in the modern economy are drowning in information, but they are completely starving for actual wisdom. They consume financial news, social media gossip, the daily panic of the stock market ticker, and the opinions of talking heads on television. This is not knowledge, this is noise. Noise is deliberately designed to trigger your amygdala. It is designed to make you emotional, to make you fearful, and to force you to trade impulsively. The knowledge I seek during my 80% of quiet time has a shelf life of decades, not days. I read annual reports of companies from 50 years ago. I study the fundamental economics of different industries. I study human psychology and the predictable patterns of mass panic and mass greed. I am looking for structural, unshakable truths that do not change when the Federal Reserve adjusts interest rates by 0.25%. Knowledge compounds exactly like capital. Every book you read, every balance sheet you analyze, and every mental model you build adds to a foundational database in your brain. When you do this for 10, 20, or 30 years, the compounding effect is staggering. You begin to see the world in high definition while everyone else is navigating through a thick fog. When a crisis hits, others only see a terrifying temporary dip in the stock price. Because I have spent decades building my mental database, I see the structural weakness of the panicked sellers and the intrinsic value of the asset. This brings us to the ultimate status symbol of the true elite. It is not a private jet. It is not a super yacht. It is not a diamond-encrusted watch. The ultimate flex of the ultra-wealthy is a completely blank calendar. A blank calendar is an impenetrable fortress. It is the ultimate mode around your cognitive bandwidth. In the corporate world, an empty calendar means you are useless. It means you are not important. People fill their calendars with meaningless meetings just to prove to themselves and to their supervisors that they exist. They treat a packed schedule as a badge of honor. But every single meeting, every single Zoom call, and every single quick sync is a violent leak in your cognitive battery. I say no to almost everything. No is the most powerful and profitable word in the vocabulary of a capital allocator. You must view your attention and your mental energy as your most precious, irreplaceable capital. Every time you say yes to a meaningless interaction, you are willingly burning your own cognitive bandwidth. You are letting someone else reach into your brain and steal the electricity you need to build your own empire. I refuse to let the noise of the market, the demands of the media, or the stress of daily operations drain my battery. I do not micromanage the CEOs of the companies I own. I hire brilliant people, I allocate the capital, and then I step out of their way and return to my quiet room. Because I aggressively protect my 80%, I am never forced to make a decision out of exhaustion. I am never forced to make a decision out of artificial urgency. Now, you might be sitting there listening to this and thinking, this is great for a billionaire, but I have a boss. I'm a 9-to-5 job. I cannot sit in a room and read all day. That is the excuse of a defeated mind. You might not have 80% of your day, but you have 20%. What are you doing with the 2 hours before you commute to work? What are you doing with your weekends? When you finally get a moment of free time, are you protecting that space to upgrade your mental software, or are you giving it away for free to streaming services, video games, and social media algorithms? The modern middle class actively sabotages their own free time because sitting in silence is terrifying to them. Sitting in silence forces you to confront the reality of your life. It forces you to realize that your linear income strategy is failing. So you fill your precious remaining bandwidth with entertainment and distraction, ensuring that you will wake up tomorrow and remain on the hamster wheel. If you do not ruthlessly defend your mental space, the system will gladly fill it with highly addictive garbage. You must build your own quiet room, even if it is just for 1 hour a day. You must start accumulating compounding knowledge instead of consuming daily noise. Because out there in the real world, the noise is mathematically designed to enslave you. And that brings us to the most dangerous mechanism of the modern digital economy. We must examine the noise trap and how 99% of the population is completely blind to the fact that their attention is being harvested for profit. Welcome to the greatest psychological trap ever designed by human beings. We are going to examine the noise machine. If the corporate system drains your cognitive bandwidth from 9 to 5, the modern digital economy is designed to harvest whatever tiny fraction of battery you have left when you go home. You must understand that human attention is the most heavily hunted, aggressively mined resource on the planet today. There are corporations worth trillions of dollars whose entire business model relies on keeping your nervous system in a constant state of hyperarousal. They employ thousands of the smartest engineers, psychologists, and neuroscientists in the world. Their only job is to figure out how to bypass your logical brain and directly hijack your amygdala. And sadly, for 99% of the population, these corporations are winning. Look at the average retail investor today. Look at the people trying to build wealth while remaining plugged into the matrix of daily news. They wake up and immediately check the futures market. They stare at glowing red and green lines on their smartphone screens while they are drinking their morning coffee. They listen to financial podcasts on their commute, absorbing the panicked opinions of talking heads who are paid to generate outrage, not accurate forecasts during their lunch break. They log into their brokerage accounts and check the price of their cryptocurrency or their tech stocks. They check it again at 3 currency. They check it again before they go to sleep. They believe that by constantly monitoring the market, they are being responsible. They believe that consuming a massive amount of financial data makes them an investor. Let me be brutally clear. This is not investing. This is the illusion of control. You are not trading the market. The market is trading you. Every time you look at a stock chart that is flashing red, your brain registers it as a physical threat. It releases cortisol. It triggers your fight-or-flight response. You are subjecting your biological hardware to dozens of micro-traumas every single day. You are burning your most precious capital, your cognitive bandwidth, on microscopic price fluctuations that mean absolutely nothing in the span of a decade. This is the noise trap. The system feeds you an endless stream of irrelevant anxiety-inducing data to ensure that you remain in a permanent state of cognitive depletion. When your brain is constantly overwhelmed by daily noise, you lose the ability to see the macro picture. You lose the ability to perform long-term fundamental analysis. You become a reactionary creature, twitching at every headline, buying when the media tells you to be greedy, and selling in a panic when the media tells you to be terrified. This trap does not just affect amateur stock traders. It completely paralyzes the ambitious, middle class, and their careers as well. Look at the so-called high performers in the corporate world. They pride themselves on their extreme responsiveness. They reply to a Slack message within 30 seconds. They spend 3 hours agonizing over the font size and the color palette of a PowerPoint presentation that nobody will remember tomorrow. They exhaust themselves navigating office gossip, engaging in petty political battles, and worrying about what their manager thinks of their new shoes. This is tactical diligence, but it is strategic self-destruction. They are optimizing the absolute wrong variables. They are using 100% of their mental RAM to play a game that has a capped payout. They are so incredibly focused on climbing the rungs of the ladder in front of them that they do not have the bandwidth to step back and realize the ladder is leaning against a wrong wall. The elite capital allocator operates in a completely different dimension. I do not check stock prices every day. I do not care what the Federal Reserve is saying on a Tuesday afternoon. I do not care about the latest geopolitical scandal dominating the 24-hour news cycle. Why? Because 99% of what is reported today will be completely irrelevant in 5 years. If it will not matter in 5 years, it does not deserve a single percentage point of my cognitive battery today. By actively ignoring the noise, I am doing something that terrifies the average person. I am deliberately disconnecting from the crowd. There is a deep psychological comfort in moving with the herd. When everyone around you is panicking, it feels safer to panic with them. When everyone is buying a hyped-up tech stock, it feels incredibly isolating to sit on the sidelines with your cash doing nothing. The media will call you outdated. The crowd will mock you for missing out. But you must understand that the crowd is almost always wrong at the extremes. The herd mentality is exactly what leads the 99% into the financial slaughterhouse. To achieve exceptional compounding results, you must be comfortable looking foolish in the short term. You must be comfortable with the silence of your own room. When you insulate yourself from the noise machine, something magical happens. Your cognitive battery begins to recharge. Your mind clears. You stop reacting to the daily weather of the market. And you start studying the permanent climate of human behavior and business fundamentals. You stop asking, what is the stock price doing today? And you start asking, does this business have a durable competitive advantage? Can this asset survive a catastrophic recession? Is the management team honest? These are the only questions that actually matter, and they are questions that can only be answered by a fully rested, deeply concentrated mind. The system wants you distracted, anxious, and hyperactive, because a distracted population is incredibly easy to separate from their money. The Wall Street machine, the brokerage firms, and the media networks all profit immensely from your frantic motion. They make their billions on the friction of your constant trading and your constant consumption. But true wealth is silent. True power is patient. You must build an invisible, impenetrable wall around your attention. Treat your focus exactly like you treat your bank account. Do not give it away to every algorithm or news anchor that demands it. Because when you successfully defend your cognitive bandwidth, you set the stage for the ultimate financial execution. When the noise reaches a deafening peak and the system finally cracks, you will be the only one left standing with a clear head. Let us examine exactly what happens when the market breaks and how the rested mind executes the fat pitch while the rest of the world burns. We have established that the system is designed to keep you exhausted. But now we must look at the exact moment when that exhaustion becomes financially fatal. We must examine the anatomy of a market crash and how the ultimate transfer of wealth actually takes place. Most people believe that wealth is created during a bull market, when everything is going up and everyone is making money. This is a fundamental misunderstanding of how capital works. Bull markets do not create wealth. Bull markets simply create the illusion of wealth. True generational wealth is forged in the absolute darkest, most terrifying moments of a financial crisis. Every decade or so, the global economy experiences a massive systemic shock. It could be a housing collapse, a global pandemic, or a sudden implosion of the credit markets. When this happens, the stock market does not just drop, it violently fractures. Asset prices plunge 20, 30, or even 50% in a matter of weeks. Now, I want you to look at the exhausted middle manager we discussed earlier. Look at the retail investor who has been burning his cognitive bandwidth, checking his portfolio every single day. When the market crashes, his biological hardware completely short-circuits. He is already operating on 5% cognitive battery just to survive his day job. But now he opens his brokerage account and sees that half of his life savings has evaporated in 48 hours. His brain does not process this as a mathematical event. His amygdala processes this as a lethal physical threat. His body is flooded with cortisol and adrenaline. He cannot sleep. He cannot focus at work. He argues with his spouse. He is completely paralyzed by a toxic combination of financial terror and physical exhaustion. He sits in front of the television watching the media broadcast absolute doom. The talking heads are screaming that the global financial system is going to collapse, and because his cognitive bandwidth is utterly destroyed, he cannot perform critical thinking. He cannot analyze the intrinsic value of the companies he owns. He finally reaches his breaking point. He logs into his account at the exact bottom of the market and he hits the sell button. He sells his stocks at a 50% loss. But you must understand the psychology of this moment. He is not selling his assets because it is a rational financial decision. He is selling because he wants the psychological pain to stop. He is buying emotional relief and he is paying for it with his financial future. The market has successfully extracted his capital precisely because it first extracted his cognitive bandwidth. Now, let us cut the camera back to my quiet room in Omaha. While the rest of the world is panicking, sweating, and liquidating their life savings out of pure terror, what am I doing? My calendar is still completely blank. I am still sleeping a full 8 hours a night. I am not watching the screaming pundits on the financial news networks. My cognitive battery isn't 100% because I have spent the last 5 years aggressively protecting my mental bandwidth and ignoring the daily noise. I am emotionally detached. I step out of my quiet room and I look at the wreckage of the global economy. I do not see a financial apocalypse. I see the greatest clearance sale in the history of capitalism. The market is manic depressive. During the bull market, it is manic trying to sell mediocre companies at insane valuations. I simply stood at the plate, bat on my shoulder, watching those terrible pitches fly by. I did not swing even when the crowd called me an idiot. But now the market is very severely depressed. It has tripped over its own feet out of pure panic. It is throwing a slow, predictable, perfect pitch right down the middle of my strike zone. It is offering me fractions of world-class, unshakable businesses, companies that produce the food you eat, the energy you use, and the infrastructure you rely on for 40 cents on the dollar. This is the fat pitch. This is the exact millisecond I have been waiting for. I do not need to make 1,000 small trades. I do not need to hustle or sweat. I pick up the phone with absolute mental clarity and I deploy tens of billions of dollars in a single afternoon. I buy the exact same assets that the exhausted middle manager is carefully selling. I am transferring the wealth from his depleted mind directly into my rested mind. The market is not a casino. The market is a machine that transfers capital from the impatient and exhausted to the patient and rested. This is the brutal mathematics of asymmetric returns. Think about the sheer scale of the inequality here. The middle-class worker spent 10 years waking up at 6 mass in the morning, sitting in traffic, taking orders from a boss, and sacrificing his health to save $100,000. He put in 100% of the physical effort, yet because he lacked the bandwidth to manage his own psychology, he lost half of his money in a single week. Meanwhile, I spent those same 10 years sitting in a comfortable chair reading books and doing absolutely nothing. My physical effort was near zero. Yet, by making one highly concentrated, deeply rational decision when the battery was full, I compounded my net worth by another 10 billion. I put in 1% of the physical labor and I extracted 99% of the financial reward. This is why the belief that physical hard work leads to wealth is the most dangerous lie you will ever be told. Wealth is not correlated with how much you sweat. Wealth is entirely correlated with how much leverage you control and how accurately you make decisions when the stakes are at their absolute highest. You win by refusing to play the game on society's terms. You win by hoarding your cognitive bandwidths so that when the system breaks, you are the only one left with a functioning brain. But you might be listening to this and feeling a sense of despair. You might be thinking, I am already exhausted. I am already trapped in the cycle. How do I even begin to build this mental fortress? You do not need billions of dollars to execute this strategy. The bandwidth rule scales down perfectly to the average person. But to implement it, you must perform a radical surgical intervention on your daily life. You must stop the bleeding. You must transition from a consumer of noise to a curator of silence. And that brings us to the final, most actionable phase of this entire philosophy. We must outline the exact blueprint for reclaiming your mind, plugging the leaks in your battery and finally achieving escape velocity from the wage slavery matrix. We have diagnosed the disease. We have exposed the invisible mechanisms of the wage slavery matrix. We have seen how the system drains your cognitive bandwidth from 9 to 5 and how the noise machine harvests the rest of your battery before you go to sleep. The diagnosis is terminal for the average person, but you are still listening, which means you are ready for the cure. If you truly want to achieve financial escape velocity, you must fundamentally change how you interface with the modern world. You must stop playing the victim, and you must become the architect of your own cognitive fortress. This requires a radical, surgical intervention. You cannot slowly transition out of the matrix. You must forcefully unplug yourself. Step 1 of this blueprint is what I call stopping the bleeding. You cannot charge a battery that has a massive gaping leak. Before you try to learn how to invest, before you try to build a business, you must ruthlessly audit where your mental energy is leaking. You must repeal your own personal exhaustion tax. Look at your bank statements. Look at the money you are spending to artificially medicate yourself from the trauma of your daily grind. The expensive food delivery, the premium streaming subscriptions, the happy hour drinks with co-workers you secretly dislike, the luxury car payment you make just to feel a fleeting sense of status on your commute. You must realize that every single one of those purchases is an act of financial self-sabotage. You are buying short-term dopamine hits to numb the pain of a life you do not control. Stop buying the anesthesia. Feel the pain of your situation. Use that pain as the raw fuel to build your escape pod. Take all the capital you are spending on the exhaustion tax and repurpose it into what I call a bandwidth fund. Financial advisors will tell you to build an emergency fund so you can fix a broken water heater or repair your car. That is the mindset of the middle class. The true elite build a bandwidth fund so they can buy back their psychological freedom. When you have 1 year of living expenses sitting in a liquid account completely untouched, something biological shifts inside your brain. Your baseline level of cortisol drops. You stop operating from a state of primal scarcity. When your manager makes an unreasonable demand or asks you to work late on a Friday night, you do not feel the terrifying panic of a trapped animal. You have the financial leverage to look them in the eye and say no. And that brings us to step 2 of the blueprint, mastering the ultimate filter. I have often said that the difference between successful people and really successful people is that really successful people say no to almost everything. No is not just a word, it is a boundary. It is a protective shield around your cognitive battery. You must start saying no with extreme prejudice. Say no to the pointless Zoom meeting. Say no to the social gathering that drains your energy. Say no to opening your brokerage app on a Tuesday morning to check a stock price that will not matter in 10 years. You must say no to 99% of the opportunities presented to you so that you have 100% of your bandwidth available for the one opportunity that will actually change your life. It is going to be incredibly uncomfortable at first. People will call you antisocial. They will call you selfish. They will say you have changed. Let them complain. They are angry because they can no longer siphon off your cognitive electricity to power their own agendas. Once you have stopped the bleeding, and once you have built the fortress of no around your attention, you will finally experience something you have likely not felt since you were a child. You will experience the luxury of a fully charged metal battery. You will have a quiet room of your own. And this is where step 3 begins the construction of the machine. You must violently shed your identity as a laborer. You must stop asking, how can I work harder to earn more money? You must start asking, what asset can I acquire, or what system can I build that will produce cash flow independent of my fatigue? In the beginning, your machine will look incredibly pathetic. You will spend $200 studying a market, protecting your bandwidth, and deploying a small amount of capital. And in the first month, your machine might generate exactly $10. Your co-workers, who are still running furiously on the diamond-encrusted hamster wheel, will look at your $10 machine and laugh at you. They will brag about their 3% annual raise. Let them laugh. They do not understand the physics of what you have just accomplished. They are playing a linear game bound by the limits of their physical exhaustion. You have stepped into the realm of the exponential. Your $10 machine does not sleep. It does not take vacations. It does not get sick. And it never asks for a promotion. And because you are fiercely protecting your cognitive bandwidth, you have the clarity to reinvest that $10. Then it becomes $100, then $1,000, then $10,000. Eventually, the output of your silent compounding machine will surpass the cost of your basic survival. That is the exact beautiful millisecond you achieve escape velocity. Gravity loses its hold. The invisible chains of the wage matrix snap. You can walk into your corporate office, hand in your security badge, and confidently walk out the door forever. You will never have to surrender another hour of your finite, irreplaceable life to an employer ever again. The philosophy I have, shared with you today, is not about sitting on a couch and being lazy. It is about the profound, unshakable realization that your mind is the ultimate compounding asset. The global corporate machine, the financial news networks, and the algorithms on your phone are perfectly flawlessly designed to grind your brain into dust. They want to extract your energy, harvest your attention, and eventually leave you with a cheap gold watch and a fragile, underfunded pension. You can accept that script. You can wake up tomorrow morning, check your phone, flood your brain with panic, sit in traffic, and continue spinning the wheel until your heart finally stops beating. Or you can look at the cold, brutal mathematics of your existence today. You can step off the wheel. You can ruthlessly reclaim your cognitive bandwidth. You can sit in a quiet room, endure the silence, and start building the machine. The system wants you exhausted. True wealth requires you to be rested. The choice is entirely yours. Compound your capital and protect your mind, or let the system compound you. That's all. Thanks for watching.